Hi everyone, welcome back to the second lecture of Unit 4. So we're going to look at Chapter 4 of the Green Book today. So we're still busy with Unit 4, Procurement Project Implementation and Closeout. So Unit 4 actually is more about Stage 4 really than Stage 5 and 6. So, but it influences Stages 5 and 6 in such a big manner. That's why I included it in here. So Unit 4, we're going to look at Chapter 4 of the Green Book. So we're looking at Chapter 4 in the Green Book. It's all about specification. So we've looked at the bills of quantities in the previous chapter, and specifications goes hand in hand with any bills of quantities. It basically is a supplement to the quantities and the descriptions in your bills of quantities, insofar as describing how the items are actually put together and priced. So usually your specification together with your drawings and your bills of quantities and even photos are usually used when pricing a document or putting a tender document together. It's all items to assist the contractor in understanding how things work. So a good specification always adheres to certain standard rules. So to get into specifications, this is on page 27 of your Green Book. It is a comprehensive and a detailed description of the type and quality of materials and workmanship. Communication tool is a communication tool between the two parties, the client and the contractor, between the project team and the contractor, the QS, the architect, and everything, all the professionals on the team, communicating what they want actually to be built. So the contractor makes it a reality, whereas the professional team conveys the message to the contractor. Okay, so supplements the architect or engineer's drawings and providing info which cannot be shown on the drawings itself. Specifications can be presented as annotations on drawings, supplementary notes, and items descriptions in the BOQs. It can be a separate document. So here it's nicely summarized what a specification is. It's a combination of all of these, and something which is not mentioned, but what you can use in practice is photos as well. I've used that quite a lot, especially with refurbishment work, where you can't really describe how, for instance, if you need to fix cracks, it's nice to have a set of photos that can be linked to an item in the BOQ, because then the contractor exactly knows of which crack, for instance, you're talking about. So that might help. Okay, the purpose of a specification, as mentioned before, it's a communication tool. It is used by clients, the contractor, QSs, clerk of works, construction managers, etc. Basically everyone on the project uses specifications whenever conveying a message. Good specification compiler is knowledge of the material. Okay, someone who puts a specification together will have a good knowledge of the material, building methods and specification project requirements, awareness of the local conditions, only when drawings are not appropriate. Okay, drawings is the biggest method of communicating information to the contractor. That old saying of a picture speaks 1,000 words is truly applicable here. General information is usually given first, and then the detail, so that it can be categorized very easily. So if you're talking about excavations, you would know that general excavations should be of this nature, and then you can specify if it is a difficult excavation by hand, is it excavation by machinery, and so forth. So descriptions of work Working methods and order should be avoided. Prescription of working methods and order should be avoided. The main thing is here is as a QS or as an engineer or as an architect, you have an idea of how it should be constructed, but you shouldn't take that away from the contractor. Otherwise, you're making yourself liable, firstly, for how it's implemented, and also the contractor is the professional in the sense of he knows how to make it physically possible. Okay, cross-referencing should be avoided, and this is especially in our computer age, it's very it's a thing that crops up quite often. You will see whenever you're doing duplication of certain sections in a drawing, it does pop up quite a lot with that you maybe forget a construction line, or the lines may have a different font setting, etc., etc. Especially if you're working from old drawings to new drawings and the line settings isn't exactly the same. I've encountered that quite a bit. Which makes it difficult to measure, for instance, on a measurement program. Then it doesn't recognize the lines as the same. So, for instance, it might recognize a line as a brick wall instead of maybe a furniture setting or fitting or something like that. Clear referencing referring should existing standards and codes. I presume this is clear referencing, pardon for this spelling, should existing standards and codes. Referring to existing codes should be is very important. Then standardization is preferable but not always possible. Okay, so you want to try and keep it as simple as possible and standardized as possible. Then it gives everyone the opportunity to compare apples with apples. Certain phrases should be avoided. Okay, and then we'll get into these phrases now. Then we get to definitions. Okay, this is very important that you go through these definitions. This is very important for me, that you know the differences between this. Is you've got your specification of documents. Okay, then you have your general specifications. So your specification documents usually comprise of different sets of specifications. So for instance, the architect might have a specific set of specifications, for instance drawings, finishing schedules, etc., whereas the engineers might have very specific documentation on, for instance, how concrete is tested and what justifies a concrete test. Should it be tested on 7 days, 21 days? What is a set of concrete test cubes? Is it only one test cube done, or is it a set of 3 cubes done? Whereas one is tested usually on 7 days, the other one on 21 days, and then a third one is left for if they as a supplementary test if any of the first 2 fails. Okay, then you've got your project specification. General specification. Your general specification is usually it describes the project as a whole. It's located, for instance, in Bloemfontein. It's located in Langendorfen Park, for instance, where you have prevailing clay conditions, where in comparison to maybe Universitas Rif, where you have very scale type of, or hard type of excavations, where it's not really clay type of material, but it's harder material to excavate, and thus also you do not have to have that much material imported whenever you're doing foundations. Okay, it specifies, for instance, the project should be from this date to this date. This is more or less the general description of the project, etc. Then you've got your project specification. going into more of the detail of the project. It is a one-story house of this size, with medium type finishes, or it's a very difficult build where you would need a crane. For instance, if you we had a project in the Glaspaleis where we added a 9th floor on top of the 8th floor and a 3rd floor on top of the 2nd floor. Then you would describe that in your project specification that health and safety would be very important. So it's very specific items that the contractor should price. Then your particular specification. Your particular specifications is, for instance, what type of brick should be used. The brick should be at least a 7 MPa compression strength. It should be made out of this fines. It should be it should have this type of moisture content, etc., etc. Then you've got your performance specification, where you specify that the contractor should conduct a health and safety audit once a month. A site meeting will be held every month, and a technical meeting would be 2 weeks from that site meeting, etc., etc. In performance, this target date should be met by this date. This target date should be met by this date. The quality should be of this nature. Whenever the project reaches practical completion, it should be lockable and usable, and people should be able to occupy it. It should be fit for purpose. That type of specifications. Then prescription specifications, where you would prescribe the contractor to work maybe at night, because during the day it's occupied by tenants and they do not want to be disturbed. So you would have specific prescriptions. Only this access gate may be used during the construction process, etc., etc. And then descriptive specification, descriptive quantification of specifications will just be supplementary items describing how a specific item is fit together. If you've got a lot of detail or specialist installation, like for instance a mechanical installation, then that design team will have a description specification of how that item should be fitted together, and how it they would make basically a description of what the contractor should design for and quote for. Okay, so you will see all these specifications and descriptions on page 28 and 29. So it's very important that you guys go through that, and like I said, this is a very important section for me. Okay, so this brings us to the prescriptive versus performance specifications. Prescriptive requirements usually spells out exactly how something is to be done, whilst performance requirements just gives an outline of what the general requirements and the level of performance is, and it really leaves a lot towards the designer or for instance a design and build to do a specific design and installation. It should perform, for instance, you would have a prescriptive specification stating that this specific unit should provide this amount of energy. For instance, if you look at the solar installation, it should provide this amount of kilowatt output per day, and it should have a storage capacity of X amount with a lifespan of, for instance, 10 to 15 years, and that would be a performance requirement, whereas prescriptive requirements would spell out more. It should be this make of solar panels. It should be at least towards the should have this performance, and it should it's much more specific to the installation. So your prescriptive requirements specifies much more, like for instance it should be this size of solar panel, this amount fitted onto this brackets, this type of cable should be used, etc, 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 where you have performance requirements just prescribes what type of performance is needed. So that's more or less the difference between prescriptive and performance type of specifications. Okay, and then we come to specification systems. Specification systems are generally items commonly used on projects and endeavor to shorten the descriptions or specifications used. So it's basically a standard set of specifications or a system that's used over and over on one project to another, and it's improved as you go along. Well-written construction project specifications are, okay, so this is very important. It should be compatible with the form of contract. It should be clear-cut and for what the responsibility is. Internal consistency, both technical and contractually. Consistency is very important. Capacity to support the preparation of balanced tenders for the work to be performed. Okay, it should be doable. Clear integration and coordination of structural elements with the installation services. This it's not limited to only structural items. If you think about a plumbing installation, for instance, you cannot prescribe, say, polycarb pipe work if you prescribe other types of fittings, which that pipe work doesn't necessarily work as well with. So, for instance, you need to be coordinated within your specifications. The one system should work with the other system, in short. Okay, then we get to the overview of development and specification systems in South Africa. Okay, so in South Africa we've got our standard system of measurement, building works, and the QS, it specifies that the QS should provide clear descriptions in the BOQ. When there is specific special materials required, they are provided in either the supplementary documentation or as supplementary preambles or in the description of the actual bill of quantities. The main thing is the contractor shouldn't be able to come back and say, but look, I didn't know how to price this, I priced for this instead of this. That's the main thing that you want to prevent. Then you've got your model preambles. Please note in the book it still refers to the 2008 one, and then the recent architectural one that was issued in 2015. This has actually now been replaced by the 2016 ASAQS model preambles that's being used, but it's basically a general standard specifications that's used to support any bills of quantities or any drawings developed by architects. It just specifies if, for instance, you do not specify what type of mortar is to be used in a brick wall, it will be deemed to be a class 2 type of mortar. So it just sets as general standard. Then anything additional to that will be specified in the BOQ or supplementary preambles as shown in the previous lecture in your BOQs. Then you've got your SANS regulations, the SABS standards. I'm not going to go into that. What usually happens, the model preambles refers to specific regulations in the SABS, and so the two goes hand in hand. Your SANS regulations is basically your most important specifications that you've got. For instance, how items are to be built, how excavation should be done, how long should curing take place, and so forth. Then you've got your commercial specification systems. These systems are usually ad hoc specifications developed by specific clients consultants, etc. But it is, for instance, if you have a developer like Greenpoint, for instance, on their projects they usually have a certain set of specific standards, and those standards have been captured in a standards commercial system of specifications. So one would incorporate that standard specifications in your tender document. So it's just a commercial specific specification. Or another example would be, for instance, a specification on paintwork. Dulux have their own application specifications, how it should be applied. The moisture content of the walls should be a certain percentage, and so that specification is then incorporated in your tender document. Then the conclusion is failure to produce quality and comprehensive specifications may result in claims for extras being submitted by the contractor, leading to queries by clients who look at quantity surveys for explanation. Okay, so not necessarily quantity surveyors, but also the architect or the professional team, basically. Why was this item not described very well, for instance? So it's always good to be on top of what a good description would be, and specific. Okay, and then that's more or less everything on specifications. It's a short lecture. It's basically from page 27 until page 31 of your green book, so not a lot of work, but quite a bit of detail contained in it. So please be aware that you go through all of those items. Something which I didn't highlight, which you should go through for me, please, is the model preambles and the SABS standards, which you should be familiar with already, but that is basically your specifications. That is most important, the standard specifications. That's always included in any project. Okay, thanks guys, we'll talk again.